Today I'm with a good friend of mine, Yvonne Edwards. She's a field archaeologist. We're working together on a project at the moment. I'd just like to talk to you, Yvonne, about metal detecting and archaeologists and the current relationships. I'd just like to talk about the PAS and metal detectorists. How do you think it's gone so far with the PAS scheme?
Oh, I think the PAS scheme has been really invaluable in terms of assessing finds, being able to display finds in museums and at evening meetings, for example. So I think that if that interaction could be made more universal, I think that would be really an improvement.
So is it possible that metal detectorists and archaeologists could combine their efforts together and apply for one funding?
Well, I think that's a very good point to raise, and the obvious thing is that if there were local groups which involved both metal detectorists and archaeologists really doing digs and then seeking for funding, they could combine together and go directly to the Heritage Lottery Fund, where they indeed might be successful and achieve enough funding to carry them through a number of archaeological ventures.
In the UK, the PAS scheme is funded. Overseas, they're saying there's not enough funding to warrant such a scheme. Do you think there's a way around this? What are your thoughts on overseas and the PAS scheme?
Well, PAS, of course, is probably largely funded, especially where there's a large need, by going to the Heritage Lottery Fund would be one example. And as for trying to establish a similar system abroad, I think that could be well based on archaeologists and metal detectorists actually making the big effort of getting together and discussing it and then putting in a cooperative application to something like the equivalent of the Heritage Lottery Fund, if it exists in those countries abroad. And it may be that that's where the starting point needs to be, is to build such systems where people can apply for funding of this kind.
As a main body of archaeologists, what's their overall thoughts towards the metal detectorists? Because I know in the early days they were quite hostile towards us. Personally, I think now it's become very, very good. What are your thoughts?
Well, certainly during the last, 10 or 15 years, the situation has improved, but it's improved in kind of two ways. Either the local archaeology group has got to know of local metal detectorists and how to work with them, and that's very positive. But in other situations, I think what they've done is to leave to one side the local metal detectorists, and somebody within their own group will take up the metal detecting. And that's in some ways a pity, really, because it means that there's been no opportunity for them to interact with other local people who have a slightly different interest in the work that's being done.
Well, Yvonne, thank you very much for your time. I think it's time we got back to work.
It's been a great pleasure, and I think it's been an interesting discussion.
Thank you.